Hello all you digital wizards out there. I am here to talk a little bit about coloring, so any questions you guys have, feel free to let me know. Just to kind of prepare for today, I went ahead and drew a quick outline of some characters that I wanted to do for a couple friends of mine. Their birthdays are coming up. They both have the same month birthday in April, and they're married to each other, so I thought it would be cute to do like a little swap over to the drawing. Alright guys, so as you can see, This is our first time doing live, so my poor husband's next to me trying to figure out how to edit this. You have to do switch, it's a trigger. So you click it, and then you switch it. The music's too loud? Alright. There we go. Alright, so I know we've spoken a little bit about layers in class and things like that, but over here you can see that I have some layers set up for what I'm doing. The program I'm using currently is called Adobe Illustrator, but these techniques that I'm going to be going over can be used in pretty much any kind of drawing program. Most drawing programs will have layers for you, and they will have blend modes, and those are the things I'll be going over today. If you have any questions or you have any suggestions on what you want me to draw later, let me know. But right now I'm just going to go over coloring and kind of show you some really cool tricks to make your characters look way better and not so flat and two-dimensional. So just to start me off, I have this kind of palette here that I've set up. I can turn off my base here, which is basically, you can kind of see how I started off. This was my quick drawing of trying to get kind of the shape and the poses that I wanted to do. I'm kind of trying to go for like a Star Trek theme here. So they've got their phasers and she's shooting lasers and he's kind of shooting off directly at us to kind of give us some different perspectives. And I was going to make them kind of like in an outer space scene, kind of floating around. Once I have that, I start going over the top with my black paintbrush to kind of get the idea that I want. The reason why I do this is because the base allows me to be kind of messy and kind of make mistakes and things like that, and then I can go over it and clean it up and make it a lot prettier, and it just works out way better that way. So I'm going to turn on my color layer, and I'm going to turn off my base. And as you can see, she doesn't have any hair. But that's okay, because we're going to just start with the colors that we want to use. So since this is a Star Trek themed, I definitely want to do like a blue shirt for science officer and a red shirt for captain. And I'm going to give them their black pants that they usually have in the show, and they have the little gold emblems here. So what I want to do is I want to start with some base color, and then I'm going to start building up the lights and the darks as I go. So for my base color, I'm going to go ahead and pick this kind of dark gray for their pants. And I like to find something that's going to be sort of in between. And I'm going to grab my paintbrush. And I'm just going to paint in where their pants are right now. And because that layer is underneath, it won't mess with my lines that are on top. Right now it looks like it is, but trust me, it's not. So once I have that, you can see the black lines pop back in, no big deal. And because this is Illustrator, what I really love about Illustrator is it's vector-based, which basically means it's not working with pixels, so I can build up shapes to color in, and it makes it really smooth and clean looking. So I'm just going to do that with her other leg here. And move on to over here. Okay, so there's the base for her pants, and now I just have to do the same for him. And if you have suggestions on what you guys would like to see me draw, whether that's Shrek, Teletubbies, whatever, go ahead and throw that in the comments. A quest for Among Us. I can definitely do that. So I'll just go over this coloring a little bit, and we'll do Among Us next. Unless there's suggestions for anything else. Should I do red as sus? So for anyone who's just joining us, I am kind of going over how I go about doing my colors. And I really like to put some base colors down before I go too crazy. So I'm just kind of trying to erase spots that I don't need. So it kind of got into the shoe here. So I'm just kind of cleaning it up just a little bit. All right, so now I want to build up that blue and red shirt for Star Trek. And I really love making fan art. It's really fun for me. And in Star Trek, they have kind of like a pastel blue. So I'm going to go for that. And I'm just going to start coloring her shirt. And as I go, I'm just kind of making sure that I'm in the lines. If I go out a little bit, that's fine. And I can kind of change my brush as I go. So I start off kind of big with my brush. And then as I start getting into more of the details, I start sizing my brush back down. I am using Adobe Illustrator right now. It is a vector-based program, but there is a few free vector-based programs that work the exact same way. And some of the techniques I'm going over today, such as filling in colors and things like that, you can definitely do in Pixlr E, which is one of the programs I go over in class. So now I have the blue shirt that I wanted here. I'm not loving how I actually drew this part right here, so I'm gonna fix that really quick. So I'm gonna go to my layers, lock that up, go to my outlines, and I'm just gonna fix this. This is the other thing that I actually really love about this program is that instead of having to erase and things like that, you can actually grab whole chunks and move them around or do whatever you need to kind of resize them. So it gives you a little more leeway with what you can do. So that looks a little bit better for her hand. I like that. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to just finish up what I was doing. Get my paintbrush. And as soon as I get this base coat in, guys, it's going to start really popping. I'm going to go ahead and grab some red for my red shirt. And for those of you that don't know the Star Trek lore, if you were a red shirt and you were not captain, you basically died in every episode. Like, it was fate that you would die. It did not matter. If you were a red shirt, you were expendable. So there's some funness about the red shirt in this. Just like there's some funness with Among Us with the red character. So this paintbrush I'm using, I actually made this paintbrush myself. And a lot of programs will let you do that. And the reason why I made it myself is because it actually changes its size according to how much pressure I am putting on the pen. So if I go kind of light, it's going to give me a really light line like that. And if I push harder, it's going to start getting a little bit thicker. So I can actually build up some really unique lines this way. So I can kind of start off soft and kind of get a little thicker. And that's how I got these really nice eyebrows here, is I actually started off soft and went thicker as I went. So that's the fun thing about doing your own. Let me go ahead and get some skin tone here. I also need to add in more black for their shirts right here, so I'll just do that real quick. So these two characters are African American, and I'm actually going to be doing some dreads for the female character here. And again, I based this on a couple of my friends that I already have, and their birthdays are coming up, and I really wanted to surprise them with a fun thing. So I've got shoes, and I think we have all the black spots. So now I'm just gonna go in really quick, put some yellow on to their little tiny emblems here. That looks good. And I'm going to go back and I think I'm going to go with like a really light gray for their phasers. And I did not plan all of this off the top of my head. I'm just kind of trying to do what I think looks best. I like to keep it kind of creative as I go. And I think that's pretty good. So now I just want to get their skin tone. So a good way to get a good skin tone in any program is you want to kind of go into the orange zone here, because that's going to give you different shades of brown and pink and things like that. So if I wanted to do like, I don't know, like an Asian American or maybe someone who's of a tanner origin, I'd go sort of like here, or I could go a little darker here. It depends. I kind of like to add in red tones to mine because I think that it kind of shows a little more sunlight, a little more flush to their skin, and it just gives you a better look overall. I'm just going to fill in the heads here. So there's one. I'm going to do this one here. I know she's missing her hair, but we'll bring it back here in a second. I'm just trying to guesstimate where I want that head to be. I'm just going to grab these, fill them in. Another awesome aspect of this program. And we were working with this program in the school until COVID hit, unfortunately, because it was in the class. I'm just adding in my last base colors here. And this is where it's going to start getting interesting because I can start adding in the details and things like that. And I think we are ready to go. All right, so I'm going to actually go to my layers. And I'm going to lock this up because this was my base color. And I'm going to go over to the top, make a new layer. And this is where I'm going to start adding in my different tones. So I have this eyedropper tool, and most drawing programs have an eyedropper tool, so I can kind of just click the skin tone or the pants or whatever I'm working with at the time. But the first thing I want to kind of decide is where is my light going to be coming from, and I think I want it to come from here as if a big explosion is happening and they're being lit up from the back. So I'm going to start with this skin tone, and I'm just going to darken it just a little bit for my shadows. And I'm going to go in and start painting where I want those shadows to be. So imagining that the light is coming sort of where she's pointing her phaser, that means the shadow should be opposite of that. So I'm going to kind of fill in his neck here a little bit and give him some shading here on the back of his head and do the same thing for her. And literally I'm just kind of shading in as I go. And again, having layers like this, I don't have to worry about it necessarily covering up anything or getting rid of anything that I don't want to get rid of. So that looks pretty good. And I'm going to add a little bit of shadow here just by her nose, because that nose should be casting a shadow. I'm going to do the same thing here for him, and maybe a little bit on his brow. Looks pretty good. And now I'm going to use that eyedropper tool. Oh, almost done. Sorry, I missed her hand here. So let's go ahead and give it a little bit of shading. I'm going to put some right where the phaser is, because the phaser is touching. And that way it gives it a little more of a realistic look to it. That looks good. Now I'm going to use that eyedropper tool to click the red and go in with that. Just darken it up a little bit. And I'm going to start doing the different paint on this red character. So it's going to come in like this. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a curve to kind of emphasize the fact that that arm's round. It's not flat. Giving it some dimension again. And anywhere that they're touching, I'm going to add some shadow too. Just like that. Because it's going to show that they're in contact. I also like that I did a little bit of a reverse gender role here, where she seems to be holding him from going down instead of the other way around. Thank you. All right, so that shirt looks pretty good. In fact, I might add just a little bit of shadow here where the star is. Nice. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and eyedrop the blue shirt now. Sorry if I get too close to the camera, guys. I'm not used to this. This is my first time around. All right, so there's the blue. I just want to darken it up just a little. I'm going to go in here and shade this part. And again, I'm just kind of trying to decide where that shadow is coming from, the light's coming from, to kind of get an idea of how to go about drawing all this. And I think that's pretty good, so I'm going to leave that as is. And now I'm just going to get their pants. Thanks, Torin. All right. So if you're hearing someone talk in the background, that's actually my husband. He is doing my editing as I go, so he wanted to take a quick break and he let me know. Oh. So again, I'm just trying to decide where that light is shining and going in and just giving the shadow to any part that I think it needs. I'm going to do the same thing up here. And I definitely want to try and follow the curvature. Basically, like if something's round, you want to try and make it look round. So I wouldn't draw straight down like this. That would be a really awful way to shade. I want to try and contour or use the way that it's shaped to decide my shading here. And I think that's looking pretty good. Now I want to probably keep hitting my button here. Go in here, just shade this whole leg here. That looks good. And I'll do a little bit here on the bottom of her leg. And maybe a little here. And I think we are good with our shadows now. I'm going to do a little bit for this ray gun. So I want to go in again and just kind of darken my color just a little bit. And I think that's pretty good. All right, so now that I've kind of done my shadows, I want to go in and add some highlights. So basically that's where the light is hitting them and I want to emphasize that light. So for instance, this right here, I might go ahead and make it lighter versus darker. And I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of notch it up a little bit here and there to emphasize that light hitting it here. Just like that. Do the same thing for the red shirt. So, yep, a little bit here. That looks good. Same thing for my blue shirt. I'm just going to add a little here on the back side of her because there is light coming from that direction. And I think her shirt's pretty good, but I need to add a little bit of shadow, I think. So I'm just going to add a little bit here, right where her arm is contacting. And then just kind of round it out. Now I'm going to do their pants. And this pen does really help, this brush that I made, in helping just getting like really interesting lines and things like that. You can already start to feel more of the dimension here as I'm adding these shadows and lights in. And I think all we have left is their faces. Hoping I didn't go too light here. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a highlight on their noses and things like that. Maybe on the top of their lip. Bottom of the lip. Let's do that. That looks a little bit better. So I'm really just adding in just slight changes here. In fact, I think that it might be too bright, so I'm just going to undo using Control Z here. I'm just going to darken it up just a little bit. I want it dark, just not too dark. Let's see. How does that look? Nope, don't like it. Try one more time. I'm going to get that same skin tone and just lighten it up just a bit. I think that's better. So sometimes you got to kind of play with it to get just the right color and everything. That definitely seems better. And I'm just adding this to their ears and things like that. Back of their neck. And probably the back of their head here. And I think we're pretty good. And I'm going to give her just a little bit of a highlight here on top of her nose. And a little bit of a shine to her lip here. And the same for him. Hi, Lucas. Glad you can join us. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give some eye color to these guys, because right now they're kind of flesh toned. Now you could go with straight white, but I don't recommend that because your eyes aren't actually straight white. They are like slightly off color. So I tend to go like a slight yellow with mine. And I mean, just very, very light difference. And then I could always add in fact, I'm just going to back up a little just because I don't think that kind of came out a little bit too much. There we go. Much better. And that looks much better. Okay. And then I can always add in a little bit of shadow to show how the eyes are lidded. So I'm just going to darken that up just a very little bit. And I'm going to make my paintbrush really tiny when I do this. And just kind of come in just at the very top of that eye. And I might even just color this whole eye a little bit darker because it is in the shadow. That looks good. And they both have brown eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and get this nice kind of reddish brown to do for their eyes here. I'm going to make my paintbrush the size that I want for their eye. Okay. And then I go in with a black tone underneath that, make my paintbrush a little bit smaller here. I'm just adding in their pupil basically. And then I'm going to add in a very tiny highlight here. Too much. I know you can't see my face. It's the hat. Backwards. So I have the overall look of what I want now. But I want to add their hair in, and I like doing that as a separate layer just because it gives me a little more control over what I'm doing. If we turn on our example again, we'll be able to see that hair. So that's kind of what I was going for, was like kind of dreaded look here for her. And he was gonna have like a really short cropped hair. So I'm probably just gonna bring it in as an overlaid kind of thing. So let me play with that a little bit. I'm just gonna add in another new layer here, and this is gonna be specifically for their hair. And I'll start with his because he's a little bit easier. Again, he's going to have that short cropped look, so I'm just going to go with a really dark brown, almost black. And I can just put a couple dots here to give it like a shaved look, basically. And because I have that pressure on my paintbrush, it gives it a lot of difference here. And I'm going to give him a little bit of a beard as well, because he definitely has a beard. Next clipping a lot. Oh gosh, this beard looks scary. I might have to make the beard on a layer underneath my outline just to get it to stick the way I want it to. So I'm just going to grab that. I'm going to use Control X to cut it. And I'm going to go back to my color layer here and paste it in there, I think. Yeah, I'm going to go right here where my shadows are, and I'm going to put it in there. Shadow ones. Oh, whoops. There we go. Okay. That's better. Stop moving it. All right. So I have my color. I want to paint it in. Just going to paint it in a little bit more. Not coming through the way I usually like. Oh, except I'm in the wrong layer. There we go. I love when I'm in the wrong layer. Not really. So I'm just kind of trying to give him this beard that I know he wears a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and give him a couple highlights. So I start with a base here. And what I'm going to do is kind of go a little bit lighter with the color. And go really small. And I'm just going to go in and kind of give it some of these highlights. I think I have to go even brighter here, actually. Let's try that. There we go. Just to kind of give it more of a beard look. I'm going to go really dark here as well. Trying to build up texture and more of a fuzzy feeling to it. That looks pretty good. Now I want to add in something here to the top to kind of complete the top of his head. So I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to add a quick layer in here for his head. And I'm going to go ahead and just give him this half dome. And I'm going to fill it in. And once I have it filled in, I can actually change it in my properties. I can change the opacity down so that it's not so dark. Let's see how that looks. Not terrible, but I'm going to play with it some more. I think if I go in and make it a little more not so straight, it'll be a little bit better. So I'm just going to kind of go in while the opacity's going on. And I think that's pretty good. Got his hair. Now we want to work on her hair. And my opacity is still going, so I want to switch that up real quick before I keep going. Put it back up. Go back to my layers. And go back to my hair layer. So her hair is going to be a lot easier because she has these dreads. So I'm just literally going to pick the color I want. I'm going to make my paintbrush the size that I want her dreads to be. I'm going to kind of just... Ooh, that's too thick. I'm just going to go in and kind of make them the way I want them to look. You can tell it starts off thinner and gets thicker. I'm just using Control Z whenever I don't like the line. Sometimes it takes me a while to get the line the way I really want it to look. Trying to match it in here without making her look like a crazy person. Maybe if I go back one more, let's see. Better, okay. Come on. I am so close here. Come on. Okay, there we go. And just kind of keep working my way through. And there we go. There's the dreads I was looking for. I'm just going to go a little bit here in the back, and I'm going to color them in. So now that I have the hair there, I am going to lock that up, make a new layer, and I'm going to place that layer underneath my hair. And I'm just going to use that to color it in. So I'm going to go ahead and paint it up, and this time I'm going to use my properties to kind of lower the opacity again, just a little bit. I'm not sure if that lower opacity went in. Okay, it did. Good. And I'm just going to grab it and fill it. And I'm not loving the way that's looking. I might want to change it up. So I'm going to change the opacity here. And I'm just going to do it by color alone. Just kind of lighten it a little. And that definitely looks a lot better to me. But I'm losing some of her ear here. And my husband just deleted my hair.
I'm so sorry.
So I'm going to actually cut this really quick. And I'm going to put it in with my colors. It might have to actually be in my shadows, so let's try that again. That definitely looks a lot better. Much, much better. I'm liking it. Now I just want to start adding in my big shadows and my background and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and lock these layers. In fact, I can go ahead and put all of them in the same layer by opening them up. And in this program, all I have to do is select all around them, and you can kind of see where the strokes and everything were, because the way this program works, it actually does it by the way you draw versus by pixel. So I'm just going to group them together for now. And now they're all in the same layer, which makes it easy for me, and I can delete these extra ones here. I can start adding in a background color. So again, I wanted them to be in this space scene, kind of fun kind of deal. So I want to go with my gradients here just to start off. And I'm going to choose some really fun colors by going to my gradient tool. And I'm going to be making this a circular or a radial gradient. And I just can go to these little dots here to choose my colors. I kind of want to go with like a purple to maybe a dark, dark blue. Close to turquoise almost. That looks good. And all I have to do at this point is this is a little bit different than if you were doing a regular program. A regular program, you would just add in your gradient tool. But since this is a vector-based program, I have to add in a shape first and then add my gradient to that. I'm just going to go ahead and add that gradient real quick. There it is. And using that gradient tool, I'm going to decide where that light's going to be coming from. So I definitely want to kind of bring it in from the side here, just like that. And here's the other fun thing is once I've decided this gradient, I can actually choose to use this gradient to shade them as well. And just so you can kind of see what that looks like, let me go to my layers, and I'm just going to duplicate this layer. Bring it above. And I know that looks like it completely wiped it out, but it didn't. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with my selection tool, select it, go to properties, and change the opacity. So now I can try to multiply, things like that. I can lower the opacity down. You can see it's starting to shade my characters as I go. So I can do color burn, lighten. There's a lot of fun ones that I can choose from. But I think I'm going to go with this soft light. That soft light looks really nice. Try one last one. I'm going to try overlay. Ooh, yeah, I'm sticking with overlay. So that's actually shading them on top of it, which is nice. I don't have to do any of the extra work. It helps a lot. I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer up. And I'm going to start adding in some textures and things to help with that. So one of the things I wanted to add in was I wanted to add in these laser effects, and I wanted to have some sort of explosion happening in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and part of his leg. Thank you. He is missing part of his leg. Thank you. Let me fix that real quick. So I'm just going to turn that off for a second. Thank you for pointing that out. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to ungroup that so I can get to the color I want. And I'm just going to paint that in really quick. I'm going to put this below the drawing. There we go. And that looks pretty good. And now I want to go ahead and get some black so I can finish that up. Now Sheldon has a leg. Much better. All right. Let's go back to what we were doing. So I'm going to lock that up. In fact, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and grab that again and group it. The other nice thing about grouping is I can just kind of move this whole thing and do whatever I need to do with it. So if I don't like the position anymore, I can change the position and play with it. All right, lock that up. I've got this part, so I'm going to go ahead and turn these back on. Definitely some really nice shading going now, and I want to add in that explosion to the top here. And to do that, I'm going to go with my gradient tool again. And I'm going to grab my ellipse. Oh, actually, you know what? There's a flare tool in here. I think I'm going to use that. Because then I can kind of add this flare effect on top. Yes. I think that's the way to go with it. I like that. And I'm going to go ahead and add her lasers as well. Any suggestions on what color laser I should give her? I was thinking maybe a light blue. Nothing in the chat. That's okay. You know what? I'm gonna go with pink. Why not? Like a crazy pink color. All right. And I'm just gonna paint these in real quick. And as soon as I finish this, I'm going to just show you some last details, and I'll go into that Among Us character for you guys. For sure. I actually like that idea. Let's go with that. Okay. Okay, so Lucas suggested using blue like her shirt, so I'm going to do with that. This kind of pew pew look. Oh, Lucas, my husband's reading the chat for me, so it's taking me a minute. Sorry about that. So I know that there's a way to add effects. Yep. And they have some really cool effects that I can use here. Trying to think of which one I want. Yes, glowing edges. Let's do that. Edge brightness. Give it more width. That looks pretty cool. Let's see how that looks. I mean, that's kind of interesting, but I don't know if that's what I want. I want more of like a drop shadow effect, I think. Stylize. Here we go. Outer glow. That's what I'm talking about. And let's give it like a bright blue color. 75%? Sure. Blur it some more. And okay. It didn't do much. Oh well. I'm trying to get these here. And I'm just going to copy them over to give it like a little more of a dimension look to it. There we go. Trying to make them look a little fuzzier here. Much better. All right, so I have that. I want to add in some star effects and things like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this up. Go into my layers one last time. Because right now it feels very empty. This will be my last layer. I'm going to bring it to the top. I'm going to get my paintbrush again. I'm going to use some yellow here to kind of break up all those cool tones. And in my paintbrush, there's actually a lot of different paintbrushes I can use. So I'm going to go ahead and find a particular brush here. Let's see. I'm going to go with, not decorative, not artistic. What kind of one do I want here? Ink. So there's these ink splatter effects like this one that give it a very particular look. I'm trying to find one that I want to use for stars here. I think that will work. Okay. So I'm just going to bring it up a little bit, my brush size, and I'm just going to kind of go crazy. That would actually. That's a very good point. I like that idea. Let me do that. So these were the lasers. Let me go ahead and get that flare tool again, which should be in my shapes. Kind of put a little flare here where his laser's popping out. Is that enough? It didn't show up. Okay. I don't think I put it in the right layer. Yeah, it needs to be on top. Okay. There we go. Nice suggestion. Thank you. Okay, so like I said, I just want to add in some last final touches. So I'm going to use my paintbrush and just kind of go in and do some fun things on the side here. I don't think this is quite big enough. It's kind of small. Oh, well, there we go. Cool. All right. Oh, so big. Too big. Lowering the size of my brush. I think it's because it's pressurized and it's giving me some interesting things here. Because if I go big, it goes very big. So I'm going to make some smaller. Yeah, so I'm just using Control Z, and then there's shortcut keys to make my brush smaller and bigger as I go. Just give me a second, I'm just going to take a quick drink. I'm not finding one I love for the space, so I might just have to go in and make my own brush. So I'm going to go ahead and make my, so I can have my options for calligraphy brushes, but I don't have any option for scatter brush, which is what I wanted to do. I could technically go into my options for this one by double clicking it and kind of giving it different things. So right now it's on fixed, but maybe I might want to mess with it with pressure. And I can definitely play with this a little bit. I could stretch to fit stroke, things like that. Scale proportionally. Stretch between guides. I think I like that. Okay, let's see what that does. That definitely gives it a really interesting look. I like that. Okay, so now I can kind of play with my stars here. Maybe a couple more here on the down end. I think that looks pretty good. And again, I can always grab these and mess with them by going to my properties tab. Lucas, I will think about it. Let's see. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to take a quick 10-minute break for some bathroom. If you guys want to do the same, feel free, okay? Hey guys, I'm back. So I'm gonna wrap this one up, and I'm gonna move on to the Among Us character that the other student asked for. I forget who asked for it. Um, any suggestions on what kind of Among Us character you guys want to see? Do you want to see a horror version? Do you want one in a party hat? And I'm just gonna save and open up a new file while I'm waiting for responses. Paris, can you explain a little bit more about what you're asking? Me before Taco Bell. Me after Taco Bell. Oh. The baby Among Us. So, oh. Okay. So I'm going to bring up an Among Us character real quick. Just so I have something to kind of base my drawing off of. And I like this one. It's pretty simple, to the point. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And just place it underneath while I do this. Much better. Okay. So I want to use that paintbrush. And again, I made my own paintbrush to kind of help with these kind of things. But it's not in here, so I got to make it again. And it's just a calligraphy brush, and what I do is I actually set it up so it's pressure oriented, and I put this up to 30 points and give it a differentiation of about 29. You can see what that's actually doing in the screen is it's like changing how big or small it's going to get as I put pressure on it. So that looks good. And this character is very simple, so we should be able to get this done pretty quickly. Maybe I'll do the one with the egg on its head or the party hat, I'm not sure. But what I want to do first is just kind of build up the body, like I said. So I'm going to start with this red here. And I'm going to use this to kind of figure out where I want my body to be. And it's okay to be messy with it because this is just like our test layer, basically. So I kind of want him to have like this pose of I'm looking at you here. And I'm just using my eraser as I go. That looks pretty good. Go in here. And it's just the basic shapes, basically. I'm just going in, making my basic shapes. And then I use perspective lines to kind of help me out. So I'm looking at his visor, for instance, and I know the visor is probably going to be going around his head. And I'm going to use this as the front of his face. So this line here is going to mark the front of his face, the middle of his face, and this line here is marking kind of where his eyes are. I'm going to add his backpack in. And again, this is where we're going to put that visor. So I'll start off a little bit smaller here and go bigger as it's getting closer to me. And I'm going to switch my color for that party hat. Give him a little party hat. Because everyone deserves a party. And I'll just add a little ball here onto the top so I know where it needs to be. And that looks pretty good. I don't like him so far to the side because I think I want to give some shadow behind him and maybe add a little vent. So I'm just going to grab his whole character and just kind of move it over here. I'm going to add a little vent here and show someone kind of popping out. So I'm just using perspective to kind of build that up a bit more. And I'm trying to think of how I want this vent to be positioned. Giving it a little bit of an angle. And I'm basically using the side of the vent to kind of figure out where I want to place things. Because I want this to feel like it's open, like that. And then the inside here is going to be just a black, like, abyss, basically. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of a border to kind of show that it's on the ground, basically. And now I'm going to add in kind of like a back wall. And I could always add in some like extra kind of sci-fi attributes to this. Like big bars with rivets. And maybe just some panels down here. So another area that I can add some of that perspective is with the flooring. So what I can do is I can start off with the flooring being a little bit smaller and then start building up bigger as I go. So here I might make more space and even more. So this will be like my border back here on the back of the wall. And I will add in like these little panels, basically. See, now my vent doesn't look right. It's the wrong perspective. So I'm going to grab it really quick. I'm just going to flip it real quick. So I'm going to go to my flip tool. And okay, that looks much better. And I'm just going to change the color on that so I can figure out what it is. And that definitely looks better for the vent. Still not quite right, so I'm just going to rotate it a little until I get the right... I might have to scale it down or squeeze it. As you can tell, I have a really hard time with perspective sometimes. But that looks pretty close. I think every artist has trouble with perspective. It can be a total pain, honestly. Okay, so now I have the vent. I've got my little things back here. Excuse me for all the coughing. And I'm just trying to make like these paneled flooring pieces here that I'm going to add these like rivets to as I go to give it some texture and some fun. And again, this is just kind of my base. This is how I'm figuring out where everything is going to be laid out, how it's going to work, things like that. And that looks pretty good. So at this point, I would start, doing the basic coloring and things like that. So I'm going to go to my layers, lock that up, create a new layer, and this is going to be my outline. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my color black. And I'm going to use this paintbrush to start building up my character. So this is what I'm going to do the cleanup, basically. I'm going to make it look pretty. And there are going to be times I use Control-Z to just kind of go back because it isn't quite what I want it to be. And I can add in a little extra on these drawings just to give it a little bit of depth here. Basically, I'm deciding like one side of this rivet wall is going to be a little bit thicker than the other. And I'm not worried so much about going outside the canvas. I'm just trying to get it to look just the way I want. Now I can build up that vent. And I definitely want to kind of have someone peeking out from the vent, I think. I'm just going to put like a little visor here and a little head. Still not loving that perspective, but I'll play with it a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to just adjust this perspective just a little bit here so it matches. And that should work a little bit better. And just to kind of test it, I'm going to go to my layers and I'm just going to turn off the bottom. And that does look pretty good so far. Now I could always click and then hold shift to make a straight line. Like that, but I don't want it to be straight necessarily. I actually like the fact that Among Us has this almost hand-drawn look to it. And I definitely want to try and keep that as much as possible. Oop. Fit on screen. There we go. And I think we are pretty much good. I'm just gonna turn off my bottom. Looking pretty good. I like it. I've got this little guy in the background. He's in the front, ready to go. And I'm just gonna lock that up and add a new layer for my colors. So since we've been going for about an hour, guys, I think I'm gonna leave it here. And I'll go over how to do this Among Us coloring next time. And if you have any suggestions on what you would like to see next time being drawn, let me know and I will be glad to draw it. If you want to see a Disney character done as an Among Us character, or if you want to see the baby, I'm not even sure what that is, but send me a link or throw it in the chat and I will try and do it next time. Hand Taco Bell. I could do that. In fact, I can animate a taco if you want. I think at one point I made a baby taco, so that would be a good combination of the baby and Taco Bell. Oh, the baby is a rapper? I'm so behind the times. Okay, so next time we'll finish up this Among Us character. I hope you see... Well, I hope I see you in a couple weeks. Have a great day, guys, and keep up the good work. Please make it happen. The Teletubbies and the baby crossover.